When you think of the N64, you probably think about what everyone thinks about: multiplayer games and of course iconic Nintendo first-party games. There were so many great games on the N64 with games like Super Mario 64, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Mario Kart 64, Mario Party, GoldenEye, the list goes on and on. But you definitely sort of get a family-friendly feeling with the system. This fact that the system had 4 controller ports allowed for local multiplayer and really brought people together. One thing you probably don't think of with the N64, at least I didn't think of this with the N64, has to be mature rated titles. I own a lot of them, I knew there were some on the platform, but when you look at things from a statistical perspective, the N64 may be Nintendo's most mature console to date. And what do I mean by that? Well, on the N64 there were 296 North American releases, and of those releases, 28 of them were of mature rated games, which is over 10% of the library. Comparing that to the PlayStation 1, there was about 100 PlayStation 1 mature-rated titles, but there was a total of nearly 1,300 games released for that platform, which of course is a smaller statistic. So should the N64 be known as Nintendo's most mature console to date? I think it should be, and in this video I want to talk about some of those mature games that sort of define the system and really made this system stand out in terms of mature games. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about some N64 mature rated games.
Hey, RGT 85. Hey, Sean.
Oh my god, it's Stevie Richards! Originally, Conker's Bad Fur Day was going to be another family-friendly entry in Nintendo's library from Rare, known as Conker's Quest. After the press criticized the game for being too chipper and similar to other accessible 3D platformers, which were prevalent on the N64 at the time, Rare retooled the game to give it a darker and more edgy feeling. The end result is one of the most infamous N64 games of all time, Conker's Bad Fur Day, which featured tons of swearing, sexual conduct, poop jokes, and more. The humor is definitely subjective, but the lowbrow aspect of it, along with Conker as a character himself, made this game really stand out as one of the more successful mature entries on the N64. The fact that this game is still talked about highly to this day is a testament to both the N64 and the game itself, as there really hasn't been anything quite like it since. You can't talk about mature rated games without talking about one of the granddaddies of them all, Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat, of course, is one of the most infamous fighting games of all time, causing the formation of the ESRB and subsequent rating systems. The original Mortal Kombat did release on the Super Nintendo, but with the blood completely removed from the game bombed compared to the Sega Genesis version, which allowed you to use the blood via a code. Nintendo learned their lesson though, and didn't demand censoring on future Mortal Kombat entries, and 3 Mortal Kombats made their way to the N64. Mortal Kombat Trilogy, Mortal Kombat Mythologies, and Mortal Kombat 4. Mortal Kombat 4 was the first game in the series to utilize 3D character models, and also introduced a weapons system into the game that made it one of the most brutal entries for the franchise to date, and a well-received fighting game on the N64. Not all mature-rated content has to be over-the-top humor and violence, and Shadow Man was a testament to another type of mature-rated game, mature storytelling. Involving subject matter such as Jack the Ripper, the occult, and voodoo, Shadow Man was a dark and gritty mature-rated title for the N64. Shadow Man did feature violence, blood, and language, but the real story of the game was the story of the game, which has you playing as a character named Michael, a voodoo priest who becomes the Shadow Man. It's honestly kind of a shame that this game is often overlooked, because it's a very solid action-adventure game with very mature overtones that I think a lot of people would enjoy, and it's actually aged pretty well. The PlayStation was home to many awesome survival horror games, and really brought out the birth of the genre. The use of CD technology allowed companies like Capcom to use voice acting, cutscenes, and orchestrated music to really set dark tones in many of their games, and the N64 using cartridges really limited these types of games coming to the platform. Except one. Somehow, someway, Resident Evil 2 made its way to the N64 with a fantastic version of the PS1 classic, with everything intact, albeit maybe a bit smaller on the cutscenes and muffled on the audio. Playing as either Leon Kennedy or Claire Redfield, a biological virus causes Raccoon City to turn into flesh-eating zombies, and you must eliminate and escape from Raccoon City. A timeless game that will soon be getting a reimagining, Resident Evil 2 is a testament to not only the pedigree of mature-rated titles on the N64, but also what could be done on the platform with PS1 games. I would have loved to have seen other games like Dino Crisis, Resident Evil the original, Resident Evil 3 come to the N64 as well, but Resident Evil 2 definitely gets the job done. Of course, you cannot talk about mature-rated N64 titles without going over the plethora of first-person shooters available on the system, and let me tell you, there were a lot on the platform. One of the most iconic video game characters of the 90s, Duke Nukem 64, was another hard-hitting game for the N64. Duke Nukem himself was crude, vulgar, and pretty much a real-life version of Conker when you think about it, and Duke Nukem 64 was high on violence, sex, and of course gore. While the N64 version of the game was toned down a bit, with such things as strippers being removed, the classic and crude Duke Nukem humor remained intact, and this version of the game featured some improvements in terms of graphics, such as more 3D rendering and more polygons for the backgrounds. When you add in 2-player co-op and 4-player deathmatches, a staple of the Nintendo 64 with the 4 controller ports, Duke Nukem packed a lot of mature, fun content into a first-person shooter on the N64. Turok the Dinosaur Hunter was actually the first game I picked up with my N64 because, well, I love dinosaurs. Turok saw 3 entries on the N64, but the latter 2 focused a bit more on futuristic stuff, whereas the original entry of the series was a bit more grounded in what could actually be. Turok himself is a time-traveling Native American warrior who must defeat enemies such as villagers, demons, and of course, a variety of dinosaurs. The blood in this game was super realistic looking at the time, with enemies splattering all over the place, and being shot in the neck would cause an outpouring of blood while the enemy held it, trying to stay alive. The subsequent versions of Turok added in things like multiplayer into the game, but the original Turok the Dinosaur Hunter was one of the first and most impressive N64 shooters that I will always love and always love till the end of time. It's definitely a bit dated in terms of current first-person shooters, but if you ever get the chance, I recommend checking out Turok to see how first-person console shooters really got their start. South Park was arguably the biggest show in the world in the mid-90s. A cardboard cartoon style of animation, South Park followed elementary school students with crude humor and made fun of everything and everyone in their path. South Park on the N64 was an interesting title. After being warned of an alien invasion by the school chef, named Chef, Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Eric set out to defeat a variety of enemies such as crazy chickens, robots, toys, and of course aliens in a first-person perspective. The game uses the same humor style of Conker, poking fun at everything from religion to real-world events. 3 South Park games arrived on the N64, with South Park, Chef's Love Shack, which was a trivia game sort of like Jeopardy, and South Park Rally, a Mario Kart style game. While the quality of these 3 games can be debated, I feel like the original South Park game did have some fun, and coming out at the time that it did come out, there was really nothing like it in terms of what you were doing and how this game really played out. One of the bloodiest and most evil franchises during the 90s was Doom, a first-person shooter in which you play as a space marine blasting through waves of demons. Doom 64 was one of the most impressive entries in the Doom series at the time, due to the use of 3D polygons for the background, and many critics at the time stated that it was the best looking entry in the series to date at that time. While unfortunately multiplayer was scrapped for this version of the game, Doom 64 did feature one unique thing, a new weapon called Unmaker, which was a laser that was never featured in any other Doom game since. With a variety of demons to blast through and a really interesting and creepy soundtrack, Doom 64 was a great mature-rated title for the N64 with enough blood, violence, and downright scary stuff to make even the biggest adult squirm. Honestly, I didn't want to include Perfect Dark on this list because to me, it really wasn't a mature-rated game even by the standards going in that time frame. The game is absolutely fantastic though, and due to more realistic blood and blood splatter than in GoldenEye, which this game was built upon, along with some vulgarity, Perfect Dark did receive a mature rating, the second mature rated game from Rare on the N64. Yes, it's probably the most tame N64 M-rated game, but Perfect Dark is still an amazing first-person shooter with some of the best visuals and lighting effects on the N64, and is often considered to be one of the best titles on the system. Alright, and that's a look at some mature-rated N64 titles, because honestly, I'm still pretty perplexed that the N64 is arguably Nintendo's most mature system to date in terms of statistics and games released for it. I think these are the best of the bunch when it comes to the mature-rated titles on the system, and were the games that I really enjoyed playing. There were other games on the system, like fighting games that we could have talked about, but these were the best of the best, the ones actually worth hunting down, and the ones actually worth playing. So let me know in the comments section down below what you think. Do you think the N64 is Nintendo's most mature rated console, and did you enjoy playing these games either back in the day or currently? And as always, thank you for checking out this video. If you enjoyed this sort of pseudo-documentary style of video, let me know in the comments section down below. I do enjoy doing research projects like this and more deeper dives into video gaming, so let me know in the comments down below if you enjoy seeing these types of videos, and I'll continue to keep working on them. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.